All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Happy New Year. I know it's been a couple of weeks since we've met as a group, and actually, I'm happy to see that we're starting to see some new names pop up, which which I was anticipating with the New Year starting up, that we would probably start to see some programs start to be planning on coming back either this next couple of months or for the summer season. So if you're new to the coaches meeting, welcome. Otherwise, welcome back, everybody else. We have a bunch of updates, but let me pull up my favorite thing to start the meeting off with. So let's go.
Our handy dandy map.
Our handy dandy map. So as you can see, we're starting to. Oh, we only have the one county that's currently in the critical, which is good. So that would mean, and I think we had emails go out today that programs are in a spot where they can come back at phase one. And there are some counties, the lighter blue counties are now just in the high, which is under 350. And that would be the threshold for us to go to phase two. But just a reminder that all programs, when you start up a sport, you will start off in phase one, and then you have to participate at that level for 2 weeks, and then you would petition to your athletic director to move into phase two. And we can maybe I'll add this to Brittany's list to send out. We can resend out the what it looks like to petition. But right now, if you are planning on doing any sports returning, reminder to touch base with your athletic director. If you're in region 4 or 5, you can email me. And we just need to know what sports you're starting up, and then when you're practicing and where you're practicing, just so we get a good idea of knowing who's doing what at the time. So the trajectory for this week was up a little bit, which is kind of expected. This is kind of when we thought we'd see the Christmas bump as far as numbers, as far as people getting together and all that type of stuff. The good news is that we were at a good spot prior to this week, so we're still sitting pretty well. In order for us to, and we'll go through competition stuff in a little bit later, but again, in order for us to have an outdoor competition, the host venue in the host county and the county that you're traveling from needs to be part of the high category, which is the 350 or less. That's that lighter blue color that we have here. So there's a few counties that fall into that range, and then the one that we're watching is, of course, Marathon County, with Winter Games being hosted there. That's our next in-person competition. So that's one we're watching, and while it's at 584, it has been dropping the last handful of weeks. So it is realistic that we can get down there in another month and a half or so. So we'll make our final decisions as we get closer and get numbers on these things, but we're starting to, I guess the way I'm phrasing it is being cautiously optimistic. Again, next week might be another one that we may not see it fall or may stay the same again, just because it's fallen so much, but also because we still have the New Year's holiday that would be included in these numbers. But I expected this week to be the worst bump out of the two. So with Christmas being here and the map still looking relatively good, that's a good sign. So again, counties in red would be it would be no participation in phase 0. The ones in navy is the threshold to start at phase 1, and then the ones that are light blue could petition to be in phase 2 after participating in phase 1 for 2 weeks. And that's why we use the same scale that the Wisconsin Department of Health did, and also using their suggestions for activity levels. I don't think this applies right now. It mainly was applying to those in Dane County, but remember, if your local restrictions are stricter than our restrictions, of course, you'd follow your local restrictions first and then ours. But this is always a good thing for us to see, to check out at the beginning of these meetings, since these are really the numbers that are driving our decisions for competition and as well as for practices and all that type of stuff. So always a good way to kind of get going on that. So overall, like I said, we're heading in the right direction. Obviously, we'd like to see the numbers much lower and we can be back to normal and all that stuff, but that's not just Special Olympics, that's overall. So we're heading the right direction and all that type of stuff. So real quick too. So perfect, Brittany, you already added in the notes, you're on top of things. So winter game updates. So we're looking at the intent to play that was filled out. So again, if you filled out that Q1 intent to play that was sent out towards the end of last year, thank you for doing that. We have I think we had 66 agencies fill that out as of yesterday. And so right now for winter games, our participation numbers are looking to be about 40 to 50% of what we would have in a normal year, which is not necessarily surprising on that side of things. As we've mentioned for winter games in the past, it's being scaled back to a one-day competition, so it's just Saturday, February 20th. Alpine skiing and snowboarding, there is the change, but it's not affected by COVID. It was actually a change we were going to make for 2021 anyways. Nicole, do you want to sorry to put you on the spot. Do you want to remind everybody what the change in the events is again?
I'm sorry, remind everybody what?
For alpine skiing?
Oh, yes. So the events are slalom, giant slalom, unified slalom, and unified giant slalom. So with that, athletes will get 6 runs or 8 runs. Wait a second. I'm sorry. It's been a Christmas break. Athletes will get 6 runs with that, I believe, although now I'm not quite sure how that math works in my head, but I know it's 1 more run than they had last year. So even though we're eliminating an event, athletes will still get more runs with this new setup.
And we have a great partnership with a ski team up there. So athletes can bring their own unified partners, and the unified partners would just do the unified runs. Otherwise, the ski team that normally helps volunteer up there would also be acting as unified partners. And then the unified final score is the combined runs between the athlete and the unified partner. So it's something that we discussed last year and it made sense to do, and then and that we're going to be implementing for this year. Right now, I think we're looking at a handful of skiers that have signed up as according to the intent to play, and then we are also looking at. So that's the change for downhill. Like I said, that was not COVID related. We are going to go to the single day schedule that we ran last year, and Brittany, I'll send that to you. That we'll send with that for cross country skiing. The numbers for cross country skiing should be within the limits that we need it to be, under 50 with volunteers and all that. And so we will run that schedule. So that does mean that there's just a slight change in the events offered, but the schedule will remain around the same thing. And then for snowshoeing, we'll be offering just the 50, 100, and 200 meter. Athletes can register for all 3 if they'd like, but we're going to do these in shifts since those numbers are going to be a little bit higher than the 50-person threshold. So you'll be shifted based on what agency you are in, and you'll be assigned a time slot. We will run all 3 events in that time slot, and then you'll be awarded after the event because your division may be competing at a different shift. But it's the safest way to try to minimize the amount of contact with outside groups. People will have a time to check into the venue. Again, for all our venues, we're going to do temperature checks and as well as our screening questions. So once you get to the venue, you'll be there for your assigned time slot, and then when you're done, then you're able to leave. We will have, for example, like cross-country skiing and downhill will have a Special Olympics area outside of the indoor stuff, and try to do whatever we can to keep people warmer and have stuff for people. But the big thing is trying to minimize the number of people hanging around for a long period of time to prevent the amount of exposure. And so that's kind of the gist for the in-person stuff. Again, more and more logistics will come out. We have we're hoping to make a decision based on the COVID numbers of the in-person one happening or not by the February 1st deadline there. And then and we'll keep you up to date on that. And then we'll have more logistic stuff after our GMT meeting, which is scheduled for February 3rd. And we'll get that information out to you guys from there. So still going full bore on planning for that to be in person, but again, just like everything else, was dependent on numbers cooperating with us. So we have that. The other thing that we're going to do as well is we are offering winter games at those same events as in practice events. So the way the in practice events will be is that you will submit a qualifying score for your athletes at the registration deadline, and then you'll have a couple of weeks to collect a final score. We use the qualifying score to division your athletes against other athletes from other agencies, and then the final score would be the place for those athletes. Agencies can choose to do both in person and in practice events, so your athletes could compete in the same sport for winter sports and get 2 medals based on their placing, or 2 awards based on their placing for those things. And so I do know that Bev and I talked about some of the accuracies of doing some of those longer distance cross country skiing ones. So those in practice ones might be a lot more beneficial for the shorter races, your first cross country skiing. And then Nicole did some research, and we were looking at using NASTAR for, is it NASTAR, right? For in practice option for those for downhill skiing. Nicole, do you want to share a little bit about that? I think I understand the process. So, but
yeah, so there's a handful of mountains across the state that have are associated with NASTAR, and they set up a course every year. So the course is pretty much the same across the board, but obviously at different mountains, you're going to have variances depending on where you go. So the way it'll work is you would go to a specific resort. They typically have either a weeknight or weekend day where they offer NASTAR racing, and your athletes would go. And then they would take their races, and typically a pace setter would race the first run of the day to set the par for that day. So then scoring will be based on the difference between an athlete's score and the par for that course for that day. So we'll really be comparing handicaps for scoring, but it's a good way for athletes to still be able to get out and go race on a legitimate course and not have to go to the big Winter Games gathering. So we will have that option no matter what happens, as Jason mentioned. So it actually, I'm really excited about it. It was fun to research and learn about. So hopefully it'll be a good option for some of our athletes.
And from a Winter Games forms perspective, then I can open up for questions, but we will have the updated forms ready for you by early next week. That gets sent out by your athletic director. And with that, we will send out some of the in-practice options, including this. And there is a list of hills that offer those courses that we will include with that. And I believe there's a contact information or at least, where they're located on there, as well as the cheat sheet for how that timing works and all of that stuff goes. So expect to see that. It won't be with Brittany's wrap-up email, but it should be early next week. You'll be getting the updated registration forms, as well as the in-practice options. So you have that information prior to the deadlines coming up for that. So does anybody have any Winter Games related questions? Seeing anybody? The other thing from a conversation too is a reminder, because that got brought up about the mask policy for this. We will be outside. We will have masks at our events, but the reminder that in our protocol that there is the option to that during cardiovascular activities to be able to drop the mask during that time to make it a little bit easier to breathe. And I know there's been issues with glasses fogging up and that type of stuff. But so basically, you're going to want to have your mask up, and then once you get to the starting line, when they're ready to go, we'll be able to pull it down during the duration of the race and then be able to pull it back up. And if it's your cloth mask, your traditional mask, or you can use the gaiters as well. That I know that's a good option for a quick up and down while you're competing as well, or a good option for if you want to continue to wear a mask during competition. But that is an option through the protocols, just to kind of give you a reminder on that one. All right. All right, bowling, we've got to update Nicole and Michaela.
Yes, I'm going to take it. I think Michaela's internet is not cooperating with her tonight. So as most of you are aware, we are going to restart the bowling league, or start fresh with a bowling league for this winter season. So the bowling league, we hope, as long as everything kind of stays how it is now, will start on January 25th. So that's the Monday of the first week. And then the first set of scores would be due that following Sunday, which I believe is the 31st. It will be pretty much exactly the same as the bowling league in the fall. It'll be 7 weeks of competition. In theory, we would like athletes to bowl 2 games per week and submit scores. But knowing that the COVID situation changes constantly, if you kind of front load scores, or if you bowl 3 games a week, please still submit those scores to us. And we'll kind of, as long as we know the score and the date that it was recorded, we'll do all the scoring stuff on our end. But the rules have been updated a little bit with some of those changes on how we will score depending on how many scores an athlete submits, as well as dates and a new registration form. And we'll be sending those out hopefully tomorrow. And the bowling sports webpage should be updated shortly. And the bowling league has been posted on the SOE event calendar. So if you go to the event calendar, all of the dates and everything are listed in that event notice. That's listed every week.
Is there an end date on that?
Yep, so it'll go 7 weeks. So the final week of scores will be due on Sunday, March 14th. And then we will host a virtual awards ceremony the following Tuesday, March 16th. And we do still plan to do weekly challenges, but that will just be for athletes who do submit those 2 scores per week. If you submit more than 2 scores, we'll take the athlete's best 2 scores towards that weekly challenge. And those are being finalized and will be posted soon. And we do, sorry, you had a question?
Yeah, I have a question. When we first started this, I had a lot of athletes opt out just because of COVID and the uncertainty of it. Are we reopening this to all of our athletes again? So
yep.
that
New athletes, new agencies, this is a fresh start. So that's why we're asking for another registration form. If you do have new athletes, we are welcoming everyone. And it's actually going to be a rolling medical deadline again. So people who you register by the, will want registration forms 1 week before it starts. So by January 17th. I do know that's kind of a short turnaround, but we ask for those registration forms by January 17th, and then we'll check for medical deadline or medical expirations and COVID waivers. And then any athlete who is not currently active with those 2 forms, they won't be able to practice until those forms are submitted, but with the rolling medical deadline, they can submit those updated forms at any point throughout the season and start bowling.
Okay. I have to reach out to my athletes to get them to see if they're still, a lot of them were disappointed that they weren't able to bowl because of unknown COVID. So I'll reach back out to them, see if there's anybody who would be willing to want to get started again.
Yeah, okay. And then on the opposite note, if any athlete did compete in the fall but will not continue bowling in the winter, we will send them a participation award for their efforts in the fall.
Okay.
Any other bowling questions? If there are no changes to your bowling roster, you do not need to submit a new one. I guess I should say if there's no changes and you're practicing at the same venue at the same time, just send me or Michaela, if you're in the northern regions, a note, and we can work with the old form. But if there are any changes at all, we ask that you submit a new form.
I have a question.
Yep. Oh, I think you're muted, Bev.
Sorry, Bev, I went to unmute you and you unmuted yourself.
When is that new registration form due again?
January 17th, and we'll send all of this out probably
Okay. I
in
had
the
that date,
follow-up
I just
email
didn't know
as
that
well
was
as
the date.
more follow-up emails, so everybody has it down.
Okay,
Yeah, so that is Martin Luther King weekend. So if forms happen to hit our inboxes on Monday when we're not in the office, they'll be processed on Tuesday.
So the Bowling USA games have been extended with that, correct? Past January
Yes.
15th?
Yep. So if you are interested in submitting a nomination form for USA Games, I believe you just have to participate in the Winter Bowling League to qualify to be nominated for that.
You have to complete the Winter Bowling League, or those who are registered for the Fall League that ended up being canceled that does qualify them.
So I originally did participate in the fall and.
You're good to go, Mike. You qualify.
Okay.
Anything else for bowling?
And just, I guess, just since I know, I'm just trying to respect the fact that we may have a couple new faces here. Reminder for participation for return to play, that again, like Nicole mentioned, that the athlete would need a medical form in as well as the COVID release form. And that the COVID release form needs to be on file for any athletes or coaches or anybody at your practices for those. And the COVID release forms can be found on the Return to Play website, and they can all be emailed directly to the COVID@SpecialOlympicsWisconsin.org email address, and those get checked daily. So it'd be processed pretty quickly once it gets in there. And also for those who weren't around for the Fall Bowling League, that bowling is okay to be done with in-person practices or athletes going out and bowling on their own and submitting scores to their coaches to be submitted to Special Olympics. You do not need a hosted in-practice or in-person practice if you do not want to, or if you do not feel comfortable doing it or want to. But families can go and bowl, but you do have to register those who are bowling. So that's part of it, and that also would be a good workaround for those agencies who have more than 8 bowlers. A good way, you either do multiple shifts or you can have some doing them on their own and some doing it in practice.
And then Jason, we just had a question to clarify. COVID release forms can be signed the first night of practice and then turned in. But athletes should not begin practicing before that waiver has been signed and collected by the agency manager or coach.
Perfect.
And to add one more thing, also coaches and volunteers should be filling that form out as well. So it's not just an athlete form, but pretty much anybody that would be at the practice or event should have that COVID release form signed.
Perfect. All right. Moving on to basketball skills, and basketball skills will kind of transition to the topic we'll talk about afterwards, kind of what, again, setting up what the sports seasons are currently looking like and what it could look like. And really this part, we do need to get some input from those who are participating or planning on participating in basketball skills. We do realize that numbers have dropped. So we did, originally did an intent to play back in the fall about basketball skills to see who would be participating. And we were, at that point, we were looking at about 500, 550 athletes. And now we with the new one that we sent out with the Q1, it's down to about 250 athletes. And we know one of the bigger problems that's causing that is a lot of people having a really hard time finding venues. Indoor spaces are really hard to get into right now. And so we understand that. And so we do have some ideas to maybe figure out how we could still have the basketball skills season and try to accommodate some of these things. But first, I think we're gonna launch a poll here. And so if you're participating in basketball skills, we're gonna ask you just to fill out the option of, so how is your agency doing with finding a venue for practice?
I added the other option in case I didn't cover all the potential options. I was trying to think of all the different ways to ask, but hopefully one of those applies.
If you mark other, we may have to ask you to speak in front of the group.
Yeah. We'll give about 30 more seconds. I realize not everyone's going to vote, so we won't have 100% submitted, but
Brittany, we have 2 others.
I see that. Maybe about 15 more seconds. If this doesn't apply to you, you don't feel pressured to answer anything. About 5 more seconds. All right, here we go. We'll share.
Which I'm glad to see that we have, it looks like 7 programs that have practice space, so that's really good to hear. Some that might have a place. I think that's kind of, we've heard that on our end too, of we'll pencil you in, we'll let you know when you can actually get in. But it looks like the majority are having a hard time finding a spot right now. So that's, like I said, that's a problem that that we knew was happening, and we know that indoor venues are really hard. The other part, when we looked at our that map previously, so in order to do an outdoor event, the burden for the county that's hosting and the counties that are traveling to that event would have to be under 100, and that would be for competition. That does not mean for practice, but we are still a little ways off from that. And so I know there's a little bit of a concern about getting down to that in the next month and a half or so. And so I'll share kind of something that we have to do with that. But the biggest thing we've as a sports department, we've been working on essentially what you got to have to do with COVID, and we've been doing for like the last 10 months or so, is creating a B, C, D plan for our program year. And so we shared previously that we were planning on doing basketball skills with, assuming that the COVID numbers cooperate, we would do a basketball skills district competition in February, state competitions in March. Then we'd start swimming and track on a normal timeline, and kind of so on and so on for the rest of the year of running a normal schedule, knowing that if COVID numbers don't cooperate, that would mean that we might have to do some adjusting or canceling. And I know that there's athletes who do 1 or 2 sports, and that sport's important. So we really want to try to provide as many opportunities as we can. So we're looking at what that could look like. Also knowing that there's some positivity to what the COVID situation could be as the vaccine rolls out, and then hopefully those numbers will start to go down. And so I kind of wanted to share with you what we have, knowing that for those of you who aren't in basketball skills but are looking at track and swimming, what we do with basketball skills essentially could affect a little bit what the timeline would be for doing starting up swimming and track. So I'll pull up our spreadsheet that we currently have. This is what we've developed, we're working on, and there's a couple of options, and there's still an option to keep on this plan. So this is our plan A timeline, and you don't need the P stand for practice, and then there's DT, RT, which is district tournaments or regional tournaments, and ST is for state. These are just some weekends that we would project doing some of these events on if we were to stay according to for each schedule. And I also will point out that none of these plans, if we make any adjustments for basketball, we would adjust the first half of the year. The second half of the year right now, we're not moving a whole lot on. So if you're looking for answers about outdoor sports season or fall sports seasons, those are kind of running according to normal schedule, no matter what plan we're on. So plan A would be Winter Games coming up on the 20th, district basketball tournaments, district basketball skills tournaments happening end of February, beginning of March, and then March 21st would be the state tournaments. One option to stay on this with the numbers going down is to have, instead of doing a district tournament in February, of just hosting state tournaments, in-person state tournaments. So we would probably look at doing a northern and a southern. And that would give us, we would have based on the numbers I've seen from the intent to play, we would be able to accomplish that. That way it would give you an extra month to find a venue, as well as an extra month to get scores in and do all that type of stuff from that standpoint. I'm gonna put this down. And then we move to the second tab. We can ignore Winter Games stuff. There's the potential for in practice if numbers don't cooperate, but we'd still look at having Winter Games right now, unless the numbers don't let us do that. So the virtual would be more of an in practice type competition for that, but we would get to that. That would be if we would be forced to cancel the in-person competition. The second option that we had would move basketball skills to the end of March, beginning of April for a district tournament. And then we would have our state tournament April, the end of April. So what that would do is it would adjust our summer games season back a little bit. And actually what we ended up doing is swapping the time frame. So track would happen mid-May and swimming would happen towards the end of May, beginning of June. And the reason why we made that swap is that swimming venues are indoors, track venues are outdoors. So there's a higher likelihood of having something happening at a track with an outdoor event compared to an indoor event. So the more time we can give for indoor venues to open up, the better for that. So that's how that would affect the summer game sports. Again, it doesn't affect the outdoor or fall sports. It would also just push the state single day competitions back to the end of June compared to the beginning of June for summer game sports. Again, we're just planning for all scenarios here. Another option would be for our plan C would be pushing back basketball skills till May. Again, providing more time for practice and getting venues. We would still do district and state. That would then push track and swimming down to June. And then we would still have our outdoor sports in July. And in this scenario, we would look at doing something we had talked about last year, where we would have a state tournament that would have summer games and outdoor sports at Carroll University. And we would try to do it as one day would be summer game sports and one day would be outdoor sports. And that would be a way to accommodate the timing with this without throwing off the back half of our year on that type of things. And then the only other option we had talked about for basketball skills is this is the same timeline as the other one, except for if basketball skills venues are difficult to find, of just extending the deadline and then having it be in practice competition rather than an in-person competition. So, but this would be the same timeline for everything else that our plan C was. So I know that's a lot there. And I know the question is going to be coming up of when are we making these decisions and how we're going to be communicating. Yep, first thing that came up. When will those decisions be made for those options? Perfect. So that's a great question. So what we wanted to do, right? That's why we wanted to launch the poll here, and then we're going to reach out to those who had filled up the intent to play for basketball skills and see where everybody's venues currently are at. I honestly, like from what I guess I see from the poll and what I've kind of heard from feedback, it may be really difficult for us to be able to have enough the teams be able to do stuff on a normal timeline. But that's the decision. That's why we need your input to know where you're at with those venues and kind of where we would go kind of moving forward from that. And then, of course, I mean, we can Brittany, we can send this out to the group so they have an idea what we're talking about. But we can, but we the more input we can get from you and what's going to work best for your abilities to find venues and your abilities to have athletes participate in the safest way possible. That's what we want to do with this. And really, when I say that last option about basketball skills being an in practice only, I think that would only happen if we were going to move to Plan C, and then we see it's not happening, so that we just give basketball skills an option to just extend the deadline for submitting scores.
Is there a team basketball?
Nope. Nope. There's no team basketball this year. Just basketball skills, and that was because contact sports are a little bit higher transmission, and so
Higher risk, yeah.
yeah. So we
That makes
created
sense.
yep. So there's a level 3 skills that's intended for team basketball players. So there's another
Oh,
level
really?
of basketball skills. Yep.
So no, what are they going to do with swimming?
So right now, swimming is in the current timeline. Swimming would happen like it normally would in April, and then have a single day state tournament in June. If we adjust the basketball schedule, that would then adjust the swim schedule a little bit.
So like there'll be area and state like there was in the past?
That's what we're planning for. Yes.
Yeah, because I know that. Now, where are they going to locate? Are you going to locate it in Milwaukee, or are you going to stay at Point?
So the single day state, and this one got asked a couple of times before too. So we're still working on the state venues. Ideally, I'd like to find something a little bit, make sure there's something centralized for those. But the state,
How about
track,
lacrosse?
well, in the state, so the state track and the state swim meet, I'm not planning on having at the same venue at the same time, because again, we're trying to minimize the numbers at those events. So
Oh, you're going to have it at the same time. That makes perfect sense. I agree with that.
So we'll keep people in the loop for that. But again, it depends on what plan we go at for basketball skills. The only thing that we would have an assigned venue for that right now is if we push it back to Plan C, then we would have both our events at Carroll University in Waukesha, which is in the Milwaukee area. Because
Oh,
we have
for
a venue that
state
can handle it.
swimming and track?
For swimming for summer games, and we would have a separate day. So we'd probably run one on Saturday and one on Sunday. Track, so summer sports would be on one and outdoor sports would be on another.
Have they ever thought about, Jason, have they ever thought about doing what they did in bowling, where they have the northern part go to the northern part of the state and then the southern state tournament for track or swimming, or no?
At this point for this year, just from we're going to have a lot of events happening in a short period of time. So we're going to keep the numbers where we need them to be, but have an option for one state tournament at this point. That's just kind of what we have to do for right now.
Yeah, and that makes sense too. You got to do it make sense for everybody. When is the vaccine coming out for Special Olympians?
What was that?
Is there a vaccine that they're giving to Special Olympics athletes?
And I know that was actually, I think Bob Ziegler sent that question over as well, as if we know a timeline. I'm using the same Wisconsin Department of Health information. I know, Don, I don't know if you looked into it a little bit more than I have as far as what category a lot of our athletes would fall underneath, or what phase they would fall underneath.
Yeah, it depends a lot on if they live in a nursing home or in a living home.
Sure.
If they're on their own. If you look at straight disabilities, it's a little unclear in terms of what that
How about
disability
if you're
breakdown
somebody
is.
like got a normal immune system, but you're living with 2 elderly people and you have a sister that you live with that has no immune system whatsoever?
Do you have a cat? I'm just joking.
No, I have a dog.
No,
I got a little. I've got a little toy schnoodle. She's our newest Special Olympics fan.
I will say personally, I think right now the deployment of the vaccines has been a bit of a disaster for the U.S. as a whole. I'm hoping that things will go more smoothly as we kind of learn. But as for the actual rollout of when you get to the different level tiers, we don't have any control over that.
Okay, I thought maybe Special Olympics was offering something to athletes.
No, I wish we could. I wish we had that ability, but we don't. We won't
Because
be
I
able
know
to
they
jump
did a
the
lot of
line.
healthy athletes with the dentist and stuff and all that stuff that they do at state
Right,
that they've done in the past with like Midwest Dental.
yeah.
Okay, good to know. Well, that makes sense. So
All right, Peter.
We have a few questions in the
Nice
chat,
seeing ya.
Jason. I don't know.
That-
Jason, if you saw some of those come through, so just.
So-
yeah,
So
go
for
ahead.
Mark Ullman asked, should we contact our venues, schools, and ask them when they would be available to us? I know a lot of you have been in contact with venues, so if you could just try to get some idea for that, and just let your athletic director know. The sooner the better helps us. So if we can try to do something in the next week or so, just to get an idea where people are with venues. I know a lot of them are saying not right now, or we're not looking, there's some that are being definitive. I know we heard from one that said we're not doing any facility rentals till summer. But if they say we're just currently now, well, but there's a potential in the near future or whatever it is, then that'd be helpful for us. So the more, obviously we can't wait for everybody to make that decision, but I think we would at least be able to make a decision for what phase we would, or for what plan we would go on, if we would stay in plan A or go to plan B or C. And I know Jenny had put in there, if option C happens, okay, they would not be able to participate. Okay, that's good to know. And that's also a good thing to know too, if you had filled out a form, if you say there's a maximum amount of time we could do skills or whatever, then let us know that too. Christy had asked, would Carroll allow overnight? Actually, this year they would not have an overnight. It's not part of it is it's not necessarily even a COVID protocol. With the way the school year is starting up, they don't have the dorm space available for us that first weekend of August like they normally would, since the first Saturday of August is the 7th, and normally like last year it was the 1st. So they have students moving in. So so that would make that, so they just didn't have the bed space for us this year, whether we were going to have a normal year or a COVID year anyways. And so that's the unfortunate part for this year. But we would work with, like we do for winter games, we would look to find blocks or some discounts for our athletes. And
Do you think-
agencies as they go from there.
Do you think that's going to be, I know for me now, it's probably going to be cost prohibitive for us to go. Because if you're having a 2-day event, now who do you choose? We could drive back and forth,
Right.
but with like our van, we can only have so many social distancing in there and all that. So I don't even know if that's possible for a lot of, it's a great idea, but logistically why, well, I don't know
Nope.
now.
And that's one of those things that we just looked at, if we're pushing things back, and how can we still accommodate a state games for both. Also knowing that the landscape will hopefully look a lot different COVID wise 7 months from now. I really hope so. We're exactly 7 months out from that joint tournament. So maybe we would, again, with the vaccine and some of that stuff, that may be changing as far as those type of protocols. But I do understand, if you had different athletes in summer game sports compared to the outdoor athletes, it may make it difficult to have some travel and then stay there without competing for the day, or having to travel back and forth. I do understand that as an issue.
And especially too, if you continue like at the 1-to-4 ratio for coaches and staying, that could be, ooh.
I understand. We understand that, and like I said, normally we'd be more than happy to do a venue or a dorm room or something like that. But Carroll just doesn't have the bed space moving in right now. So.
I have a
Okay,
question
thanks.
I have a question on that. To add to that, so a lot of athletes have to travel so far. Is there anything you guys are working on as far as athletes traveling with all the restrictions?
As far as, so we won't, I mean, the one travel right now is going to be for the winter games stuff, and we do have we have hotel blocks for winter games. As far as skills competitions, as you know, it depends on where our venues are, but I mean, and depending when those run, I mean, again, the restrictions may be changing. This is a kind of ever changing, ever fluid thing with the COVID numbers. So I guess I don't know what specifics you're looking for as far as
Like,
that goes.
as far as summer sports go.
Yeah, and like I said, we can when we get closer, we know what the COVID situation is. At that point, we can cross that bridge then. As far
Yeah,
as protocols are.
I think the thing with Christy, it's a good point, but I think what we're trying to do is provide as many options as possible in an environment where things change so rapidly. We don't know when something's going to be, and so for those people that maybe they might have to make a choice if they're both at that same weekend. It's just not a perfect scenario, but this is not a perfect year. So
The
try to do the
reason
best that
why
we
I'm
can.
saying this is because with the Carol, with what you guys are saying, the outdoor and the summer game season, it looks like it could turn into a big mess. It's not that I'm complaining, it's just I'm trying to just make a statement.
Jason, the other thing, there was a couple comments in the chat about people, if we are pushing things into the summer, it's going to be hard or next to impossible for them to participate. And again, it's we're trying to do the best we can with these things, but we're also trying to make sure that at some point there's an opportunity. I guess one of the things is I would ask maybe any of those of you that are in the school programs, is there a way that if that happens and we do push that back, is there a way to maybe learn? I think through this past year we've all learned to do things differently, and if there's a way that schools, or again how they're how they function, if there's just a way to maybe rethink the ability to do something more in the summertime. Again, it may be impossible, but we know that there's several programs out there that might struggle with that, and so just trying to find ways that we can, if there's something we can do to help with that, to make sure that you could participate still in summertime. I'm not sure if anyone wants to comment from one of those programs.
I have a different question. We're dependent on someone allowing us to use a pool for swim. Track is the same thing. Someone has to allow us a facility. So let's say we swim at UWO, and let's say UWO just says a flat no, they're not going to allow it. We're going to hang tight then for another year because we have a good relationship with them. What happens for those athletes who then want to pursue USA Games but don't have the opportunity to participate in the sport this year, either because we couldn't find a facility or they aren't comfortable participating at this point in time in the game? What are the options for that?
Yeah, similarly for what we've done for bowling is that we're using historical data. So basically what we did is we did placement based on 2018 and 2019 or participation in 2021. So it doesn't fully help those who maybe didn't hit the qualifying standard for 2019 or 2018 or 2019. But since we're doing it for 2 years, and depending on the numbers we get, it will depend on what that top criteria is. It is making it more available than on a typical USA Games year, even though that our qualifying year was kind of interrupted with everything going on with COVID. So if they don't participate this year, they're not completely out of it, but there'd still be some standards to hit like we would do for normal qualifying.
Sure. Okay, thanks.
Yep. And I saw SG, I don't know who that somebody has their hand raised. That's asked to unmute. If your screen name's SG.
I'm sorry, that's me. I have a question. I booked venues, but if we move it up, I'm gonna have problems getting the venues moved to different dates.
Sure.
And I had to also get venues for track, but I haven't booked those yet because I don't know, what's happening. Of course you don't. So what would you suggest I do? Should I extend my venues, through April for basketball if I can?
I'd maybe look into that. Like I said, I want to be able to get some feedback and have an answer for you sooner than later. I don't want to let this sit for a while, and we will, because essentially our first district competitions would have be coming up here in February anyways. So it probably won't be a bad idea to see if you can extend into April. The other so I get that's I guess my answer for you on that. The other question I have, I know we're looking at if we were to push things back or do anything like that, we were talking about still doing a district and a state. We could essentially push things to April and not worry about a district tournament like we kind of been discussing. And that would give us enough for a venue, and then we still have the one competition. Are people, I guess, for those who are doing basketball skills, is that interest? Are people interested in if it's just the single, if we had just one level of competition rather than the 2 levels of competition?
I think at this rate, I would go with the April because, you know, the vaccination is not happening very fast. The COVID numbers are still going up. I think to try and push yourself in March, I think I'd rather have a solid date in April than try and scamper and have to cancel it in March if it was me.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any input on that, the basketball skills? I see Stephanie Paul Travis. So right now, our state venue that we have for the Southern for 6, 7, and 8 would be at, right now, we have a good spot at Mukwonago that wants us to have it there. And then we would try to, I know Nina right now has been trying to, Nina has a venue up there where we did our state basketball skills in previous years. I know they're not currently letting people in. We're still looking at our options, but we may look at something a little bit central there, you know, whether it's going to be on the far side of 4 or into region 2. It just, you know, we're looking at the same venues that you're looking at. So if they're letting you in, then that's when we're gonna have the opportunity to get in those. But if we move the date, that's what probably we'd be looking at doing. So that was the question. I know Area 3, I know you guys drive a lot, so we would try to find something that accommodates, but we're also trying to find a venue that accommodates for everybody too.
What about district track and swimming? Are you guys doing it in the normal April and May? Or are you guys moving the normal April and May?
Mike, and that's we kind of just discussed is that what we do for basketball is going to affect what we do for swimming and track. So right now it's planning on the normal time frame, but we may have to push it back just a couple for that. Yeah, and Dan, I get what Dan had mentioned to have a virtual district basketball skills competition. Once we get this all squared away, we'll also have some ideas for the in practice one where you can do it without traveling to an in-person competition. And so that time frame we could definitely make that time frame we can definitely make it so that that season runs a little longer for those who want to get scores in earlier and just be done with basketball skills before the in-person tournament. So we would definitely look at that as an option as well. And then
Jason, did you see the question about track, about practicing in parks or outdoor facilities? So it definitely a yes for outside track facilities if they're available. For parks, I think it's probably every park is different, and measuring out would be a little bit more difficult, but if that's the only option that we have, at least from training, I think that's fine. It comes down to when you need to get the qualifying scores. It can be a little tricky in a park.
And with parks, I would just say make sure that it's better for us just to notify them that we're going to be there with their COVID protocols than to just plan on going to a park without having something without notifying anybody, just in case somebody. I know they're watching some of those venues a little bit to go against gatherings and that type of stuff.
And with a lot of the schools moving their sports seasons around, just like we're trying to do, there could be football going on at at some of the high schools during the spring, and so try to get in for practice may be difficult at times too. And then the other question is soccer. Yes, the intention is to have soccer.
Yep, and we're still planning on doing it this year. It's going to be a combined one-day state tournament. So we would not have the two separate one up in the Green Bay area and one down at Mukwonago. We would do a one-day soccer tournament to accommodate that. Again, and that's all kind of TBD. It's depending on it's going to run around the same time as the state track and swim. So it'd be right now it's planning for early June, but could move to that they could move with those seasons as we kind of discussed on that. So.
Jason, I did have questions within our agency about the vaccination. Will Special Olympics require that in the future?
Yeah, and that's an update. We were able to I have a non-update, but SOI, the last coaches meeting right before that one, they had basically SOI had said we are working with our health professional organizations and all of that to figure out our best plan of action. So we would go off of what their lead is for whether it's required or not required. So I would just, at this point, I can just tell you at this point, we're not requiring it. Obviously, it's not widely available at this point. And then when it comes down from SOI, if they require it, then we would have to as well. And then we would figure out how we're tracking that.
Okay.
So, and I'm assuming whether it's required or not, SOI will provide some way of tracking who has it, who doesn't have it as well. But at this point, there's a lot of questions out there, and I mentioned previously that they do biweekly COVID meetings just like we do. So we find the information out about the same weeks that typically we have our coaches meetings. So we'll keep everybody up to date as soon as we have the information. But the last thing they told us was that they are working on it.
Hey, I just have a quick question. If basketball does get pushed back and we did not say we were intending to play basketball or doing basketball skills, if it does get pushed back and our school opens up the gym, could we still join possibly?
Yeah, the intent to play is meant for us to use for planning purposes. It's not an end all be all for participation. I would just, as soon as you know, just notify your athletic director. That way we can better plan for the numbers for those competitions. But yeah, that's definitely allowable. Because I know this, again, just like our stuff is all fluid, your stuff is all fluid. And we want to make sure that athletes have the most opportunities to participate if we can do it safely. So, perfect. Did I miss any of the ones? I know, Brittany, your comment is going to be covered in the next section. So the fitness competition, but
problem.
So I guess.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Scott.
The problem that we have is that a lot of our schools are saying that they want to have the school kids do theirs first and see what kind of outbreak, or if they have an outbreak or anything like that, before they allow outside agencies to come into their schools. And that's what we're kind of running across.
Yeah.
We don't know what to do with that.
Yeah, and I think that's the challenge. The further we move things back, knowing that there's high school sports, the fall sports that got canceled, that they're pushed to the spring, are going to start popping up too, and some of those type of things. I understand that that's a challenge. We're trying to accommodate as much as we can. We know that it's not going to be 100% of agencies are going to be able to find a venue or be able to come in. I don't know if there's any solutions for finding a 1 year option for some venues or not. I know a lot of if one school is doing it, they're all doing it type thing right now. But I would say, I guess that's a problem we're all kind of running into right now. And if we find a way to kind of work around that, we'll let people know. But as we look for venues for competitions, we're having the same problems as agencies are. And sometimes a little bit more, just because our events are going to be bigger than a practice typically would be. But we'll let you know as we find things out on our end too. So we're in this, we're asking in similar communities. So. Peter, you got a question for what we were talking about? You're on mute.
Well, I got it. Okay. Hey, yeah, I was going to ask you about the thing here. There's a little fan here. There's a new little fan, Daisy, little snoodle. I just want, hey, can you say hi, Daisy? Hi. So anyway, I was going to ask you, about if it was pushed back.
Yeah.
Now, what are they? Is there going to be like any opening ceremonies at the events or not?
It's all going to be dependent on what the COVID situation is. So hopefully, if we can get to like
Sure.
at Carroll, we could do something if the COVID stuff cooperates. But otherwise, all that stuff is dependent because obviously opening ceremonies, awards, all that stuff is where the biggest gatherings are. So we try to minimize some of that.
Yeah, and I know what they're saying about what he was saying about the schools and stuff. I know some of our schools up here played sports in the fall, some did not.
Yeah.
But I know we practiced at Menominee, and I don't know if the high school is going to let, like I say, outside things in, but maybe later on in the year they probably will, because once this all gets figured out and all the vaccine gets there, maybe the restrictions, a lot of them I anticipate will go away.
Yep.
You know.
Yep. Thanks, Peter. I'm going to try to keep things going here just because we're a little bit over after 8 right now. So, PJ, you had a question?
I just want to say I heard rumors from about MPS that they're going to probably be virtual the rest of the year.
Okay. Yep. And I know Amber's working with that crew and trying to see all that stuff. So.
Yeah, with us not doing anything, I don't know what's going to happen.
Thanks, PJ.
Yep.
All right, Brittany, do you want to jump into the fitness?
Yeah, what we've all been waiting for, right? I know we're past 8, so I'll try to be brief and include as much as I can in the follow-up. But I know we have some new faces, so I'm just going to quickly go over what the fitness competition is. So it is a new event that we're offering. It can be done virtually or in person, depending on your situation and what your athletes are comfortable with. It's a great option. I know somebody said in the chat that we might just be practicing for the next however many months, but the fitness competition will happen regardless because it can be done virtually. So that's a great option for athletes, and they can do that alongside another sport, so they can participate in both. The fitness competition will be broken into 3 different levels, 3 different ability levels, if you will, a low, medium, and high. Each level will consist of 4 different exercises that they will be assessed on and scored on. I have a manual ready to go that tells you exactly what the exercises are, how to score them, how to judge them, and whatnot. So no worries on that part. Participants will submit a preseason score, a mid-season score at like the week 5 mark, and then an end of season score around week 10. The mid-season score will help us division athletes into appropriate divisions to be scored on later. And then it'll be based on their % improvement from that preseason score. When they are awarded, they'll be awarded based on their end of season score % improvement from the beginning in those divisions that were determined mid-season. Again, the manual that I have explains all of this in more detail. So if I saw that kind of confusingly, hopefully the manual will help explain it a little bit better. Let me pull up my notes before I forget anything. So the manual, and we actually have, it's an optional tool, but a practice plan, if you will, has just a bunch of different ideas for what to do at your fitness practices. Those will be coming out in the follow-up email tomorrow. We will also have a coaches training, again, optional, but highly recommended for any coaches that are interested in coaching for the fitness competition. We'll go over all of the specific exercises as well as answer any questions you have about, how to run a practice or what to do at the practice and things like that. I will include all of this in the follow-up email, so don't feel the need to write all this down really fast. But that coaches training will be Tuesday, January 19th at 7 p.m. I know it's a little bit short notice, but I want to squeeze it in before the season starts. SOE will be offering some SOE-led practices. These are meant to be in addition to what your agency is doing, but I know that some agencies may be more or less comfortable with fitness. And so we just wanted to make sure that there is an opportunity for athletes to attend a practice in case an agency doesn't have one. Those will be held Tuesday evenings at 7 p.m. and Friday mornings at 10 a.m. Again, ideally, those are in addition to what the agency is offering, but at least athletes will have those 2 practices to attend if they're able. Preseason scores are to be collected in a certain time window. which is February 1st through the 7th, so about a week long, somewhere in there if we're collecting those scores, and then they'd be due midnight of Sunday, February 7th. Kind of just going through the timeline really fast, the mid-season scores would then be 5 weeks later, that March 1st through the 7th. Luckily, it falls on the same dates, which is nice to remember. And again, due at midnight that Sunday, March 7th. The end of season scores would then be 5 more weeks after that. So that falls on the week of April 5th through the 11th. Again, midnight Sunday, April 11th would be when the end of season scores are due. Agencies or coaches only need to submit the raw score, the score. So for example, one of the exercises are push-ups. You'd submit, Joe did 5 push-ups. We'd need to know the number 5. We'll do all the calculations on our end. It gets a little tricky because we convert scores into points, into percentages. And so we'll figure all the math out. We want to make it as easy as possible on coaches. But the manual does go into detail on how we do that if you're curious how the math plays out. That's the quickest rundown I could do on the fitness competition. I will include more information in the follow-up email, but I know we're already past time. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
What about agencies that aren't doing anything? Can I still compete?
Yep, you can still compete. Yep, the great thing about the fitness competition is because it's virtual, anybody really can join. So yes, you can still compete. And one thing I forgot to mention, kind of just popped in my head. So we'll have an individual option as well as a pair, and that could be unified or traditional, so 2 athletes together, and a team, which would be teams of 4, a unified or a traditional option. So there's a bunch of different options. If you sign up as a pair or a team, athletes would automatically qualify to be in the individual as well. So they would potentially, they would double award then based on how they do. Jake, I see your hand raised. You want to unmute yourself?
Can somebody fill me in what I missed?
Read the follow-up email tomorrow.
like on the sports in general.
I know, Jake, we covered a whole heck of a lot, so we might have to do that on a different call or maybe a different.
Yeah, Jake, give me a call tomorrow and we'll go through the recap email, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Any questions on fitness stuff? I know I went through it really fast and said a lot of dates and times and things, but again, it'll all be in the email tomorrow. If for some reason you are not on my email list and you just joined Zoom via maybe the event webpage on our website, or maybe someone just shared the link with you, if you want to be included on the follow-up emails and you're not getting them, you can either shoot a message in the chat box right now, or you can email me directly. My email is bhoy. You can see my name in my chat box. I can write it in the doodad. Oh, thanks, Nicole. Or you can fill out the form that Nicole just put in the chat, and then that'll automatically sign you up for the follow-up emails.
Do we just do the online registration when it comes out if we do it virtual?
We're still working out what the registration forms are going to look like. They're most likely going to be some sort of Excel spreadsheet, which sounds intimidating, but it won't be, I promise. But we'll share that when that's available. It's not ready yet because we still got some things to work out in our database. It's a new sport, so we're still kind of figuring it out.
Yeah, I got a question for you.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know if you got my email address or not, but it's
I have it somewhere, so I'll make sure I add your name to my list. I'll do it right now.
Peter, I have it. I'll forward it to
thanks a
Brittany.
lot.
Yep.
Any other questions? Once you're reading through the manual and whatnot, when it gets sent out, and if you do have questions, you can feel free to email me and I can answer them then. I guess the next thing on our agenda for the meeting in general, again, I know we're past time, was just an open Q&A. I know we've had a lot of Q&A, but if there are any other questions not related to fitness, now's your chance.
right, Jake, what do you got?
I was just wondering, is there an update for USA Games?
Todd, we went over a little bit of that, so Nicole will fill you in tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah. If not, I know the one thing that brought up in the chat, anybody want to raise your hand if you guys are doing, anybody doing polar plunge this year? I just signed up today. Hopefully get a good one. Reminder, you can do that. We have the in-person options, the at-home options, just like everything else COVID related. So, and then there's the fundraising incentives for agencies that we went over last time. If you have any questions on that, go on the website, and hopefully we have some fun ideas for the at-home plunges. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do.
Will there be like a Facebook page or some type of social media to post if you do something at home? Hashtag or?
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but they're absolutely doing that. Maybe we did was it right before Christmas? There was somebody from development on talking about plunge. So
I can try to figure that out and include it in the follow-up email with the hashtags and tags and all.
Yeah, because it's just like with our stuff. I mean, athletes are doing stuff at home, but whenever we have these kind of online celebrations, we want to have as many photos and videos and things like that we can to kind of, in this virtual world, celebrate together.
Yeah, for sure. Our school wants to start doing things, but we just kind of do it and then it goes unnoticed.
Yeah, well, we'll try to follow up, Jenny. Brittany, you put that in the notes, and then we'll check with Krista's team.
All right. Otherwise, thank you so much for. I went a little bit past 8 tonight, but thanks everybody. We're back at it every other week. So our next one, I should have looked at it. So I guess it'll be the 21st. So we will see you guys then. Otherwise, if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to any of us or the COVID email, the COVID@specialolympicswisconsin.org. All right. Thanks, everybody.